Trident is a great river in the Riverlands of the Seven Kingdoms of Westeros. Formed by the joining of many smaller streams and tributaries, is amongst the largest waterways on the continent of Westeros, and is created by the meeting of three principal large branches: the Red Fork, the Green Fork, and the Blue Fork. In many ways, the river is more than just the lifeblood of the Riverlands, but Westeros itself. All three branches of the Trident, red, blue, and green, are swifter and at least twice as wide as the Little Royne in Essos. The Green Fork and Blue Fork join first, after which the widened river is later joined by the Red Fork to the west of Lord Harroway's town and the crossroads. From there, the Trident flows eastward, past the Ruby Ford, before eventually emptying into the Bay of Crabs. Salt pans and the quiet isle lie at the broad mouth of the Trident, with fields and farms spread across the nearby lands. Darry and Harrenhal stand to the south of the river. Amongst the other tributaries that feed the Trident, there is the Big Willow and the Darry. The forks of the Trident provide the most convenient routes for transporting goods and men throughout the Riverlands. Commonly sighted upon the waters include fisherfolk in skiffs, grain barges, floating shops, mummers' boats, and river galleys. At times, lines of pole boats can stretch for miles or more along the river. The Ruby Ford and the Twins serve as the two principal crossings of these waters. In times of war, the Trident and its branches can act as a formidable barrier, making it very hard to move troops and supplies, not just around the Riverlands, but across Westeros itself. Though, they may also allow for swift movement by longship, meaning, if you control the Trident, you control the heart of Westeros itself. The distinctive colours of the Trident are each reflected in the arms of House Shawnee and House Strong, while the River Kings of House Teague once bore a trident upon their sigil. In the days of the ancient River Kings, Christopher IV Mudd, King of the Rivers and Hills, held dominion over the lands, stretching from the Trident to the Neck. During the coming of the Andals to Westeros, these newcomers sailed their longships up the Trident and its many tributaries, using the rivers as avenues to launch attacks upon the kingdoms of the First Men. Hence why many of the central kingdoms of Westeros fell with more ease than those more isolated kingdoms to the extreme north and south. In later years, the Storm King Arlen III Durrandon seized control of the Trident from the Teagues, the last rulers to hold the title the Kings of Rivers and Hills. Control of the region changed hands again when Harwin Hoare, King of the Iron Islands, wrestled the Trident from Aric Durrandon, employing ironborn longships to move more swiftly through the territory. The site at which King Torrhen Stark bent the knee to Aegon the Conqueror on the banks of the Trident would become a famed inn called the Inn of the Kneeling Man, or at least that is what the owners of the inn have claimed for centuries. After the Targaryen conquest, control of the Riverlands and thus the Trident was granted to House Tully of Riverrun. Over the near 3 centuries of Targaryen rule, the Riverlands would play a key role in several battles that would define the history of Westeros, most notably the Battle of the Red Fork during the Dance of the Dragons. During Robert's Rebellion, the Trident would be the site of the defining battle of the war, aptly named the Battle of the Trident, in which Robert Baratheon killed Rhaegar Targaryen at the site that would become known as the Ruby Ford. Of course, during the War of the Five Kings, the Riverlands is the main theatre of war, and thus the Trident is fought over by mainly the Lannisters and Robb Stark's Northmen and Rivermen. A blanket of pale mist still clung to the surface of the water, the murky green currents swirling past underneath. The shallows were muddy and choked with reeds. The Thoughts of Tyrion Lannister, A Game of Thrones Chapter 62, Tyrion 8. While the Trident is made up of an unknowable amount of rivers and streams, the 3 most important and famed are the 3 main Great Forks, each huge river systems in their own right: the Red, Blue, and Green Fork. The headwaters of the Green Fork lie in the southern reaches of the marshes of the Neck, with Greywater Watch apparently situated at one of its eastern sources, but given the nature of Greywater Watch, the exact location is thus unknown. It's because the waters flow from the boggy waters of the Neck, the Green Fork takes its name, with the river having a slight green hue to it. 2 of its largest tributaries converge just north of the Twins, the twinned castle seat of House Frey, where the river runs deep and swift. The crossing of the Twins is the only place for leagues you can cross the Green Fork, making the Twins such a strategically important seat. According to Rob Stark, there is no crossing of the Green Fork north of the Ruby Ford until the bridge at the Twins, though ferries do operate across the Trident at Harroway. It appears the House Frey built the first version of the Twins, made from wood, at least 600 years ago, and over time built up their seat and bridge into the formidable and powerful position we find it today. From there, the Green Fork flows southeast, with the King's Road running roughly parallel to its course. Along its banks, the fertile valleys, green forests, thriving towns, and sturdy castles and holdfasts are situated. Further south, the Green Fork is joined by another tributary that rises from the Mountains of the Moon and is crossed by the King's Road. Beyond this meeting, the river is joined by first the Blue Fork and then the Red. During the early stages of Aegon's conquest, before the true threat of Aegon and his dragons was realised, Lady Shara Arryn, acting as regent for her young son, offered Aegon the Conqueror an alliance in return for the land between the Green Fork and the Mountains of the Moon, but she was declined. It is not clear why she was declined. However, access to the Green Fork would open up trade routes offered by the river to the men of the Vale. It seemed that the trade along the Green Fork was also greatly boosted when King Jaehaerys I ordered construction of the King's Road along the banks of the Green Fork in 62 AC. It saw the construction of several rest stops and inns following the path of the river, with the road bringing even more footfall and trade to the area. All the way up the Blue Fork they rode, past 7 streams, where the river unravelled into a confusion of rills and brooks, then through Hag's Mire, where the glistening green pools waited to swallow the unwary, and the soft ground suckered at the hooves of their horses, like a hungry babe at a mother's breast. Thoughts of Catelyn Stark, A Storm of Swords Chapter 45, Catelyn 5. The Blue Fork rises from clear, spring-fed sources and marshy lands south of Seaguard and the Twins. The water coming from the pure fresh springs thus has a blue colouring, hence the name Blue Fork. When the river floods its banks, travellers seeking to pass around it must make their way through the boggy regions of 7 Streams and Hag's Mire. This can be very dangerous, with many choosing to avoid travel completely rather than becoming stuck in the bogs. From its headwaters, the Blue Fork runs southeast, passing Oldstones, Fairmarket and Ramsford, before joining the Green Fork north of Lord Harroway's town. King Christopher IV Mudd, known as the Hammer of Justice, ruled his realm from a castle overlooking the Blue Fork, the ruins which are now called Oldstones. Harwin-Hor, King of the Iron Islands, began his conquest of the Riverlands by landing 100 longships south of Seaguard and hauling them overland to the Blue Fork. From there his Ironborn used the river to wage war against the Storm King Aric Durrandon, securing their greatest triumph at the Battle of Fairmarket. The way in which the Ironborn were able to use the Blue Fork during their invasion of the Riverlands encapsulates how important the rivers are to the movement of people across the kingdom. While it's still very possible that Harwin-Hor could have still taken the Riverlands without the use of the rivers, it would have taken longer and have been much bloodier. In the same way the rivers allowed House Hor to capture the kingdom, it also, when properly manned, made the kingdom easier to defend, due to the speed at which armies could be moved around the region. The Red Fork was wide and slow, a meandering river of loops and bends, dotted with tiny wooden inlets and frequently choked by sandbars and snags that lurked just below the water's surface. The Thoughts of Jaime Lannister, A Feast for Crows Chapter 44, Jaime 7. The headwaters of the Red Fork rise in the hills of the Westerlands, near Hornvale and Deepden. From there the river flows northeast, passing Pink Maiden and the Mummers Ford, Shiera and Stone Mill. Upstream from Riverrun, the river bends in a broad loop, where the waters grow shallower and more clouded with mud. It's believed it's named after the mud and silt from the western mountains. Along this stretch, the west bank stands higher and more thickly wooded to the east. At Riverrun, the Red Fork is joined by the swifter Tumblestone River. The Tullys can open a sluice gate along the third side of their castle, turning their stronghold into an island when the waters are allowed to flow through. While the deeper and vaster Tumblestone runs blue and white, the broader and more tranquil Red Fork carries a muddy red-brown hue. Beyond Riverrun, the river continues eastward, the southern shore marked by red clay, whilst on northern side rises into rocky cliffs crowned with beech, oak and chestnut trees. Watchtowers, tower houses, villages and roadside inns dot the bank as the river winds onwards in a series of loops and bends, scattered with islands and sandbars. Stonehenge lies south of the Red Fork and east of Riverrun, while Raventree Hall stands north of the river and south of the Blue Fork. East of the Inn of the Kneeling Man, the river spreads wide but runs shallow, its banks thick with red mud and reeds. Sir Warren's Tower House stands a few miles from the inn, and countless brooks and lesser streams feed the waters along their course. The Red Fork flows on past the Skipping Stones and Red Deer Island before joining the Trident north of Lord Harroway's town, after which the great river continues eastwards to the Bay of Crabs. The settlement of Sallydance lies somewhere along the banks. For much of its length, the old river road follows the course of the Red Fork. During the coming of the Andals to the Riverlands, Axel Tully constructed the castle of Riverrun at the confluence of the Tumblestone and Red Fork. The land has been granted to him by Armistead Vance, one of the most powerful Andal conquerors of his time. This strategic position allowed Riverrun to command the waterways and defend against attackers, helping establish the rise of House Tully. During the Targaryen civil war known as the Dance of the Dragons, the Red Fork would be the site of one of the most important battles to happen in the Riverlands, between the men of House Lannister and Lord Jace Lannister of the Green faction, and the Rivermen supporting the Black faction of Rhaenyra Targaryen. While the Greens would win the battle, they took heavy losses in the process, including many key leadership figures.